Hey friends, thanks so much for tuning in. I have a very important silver, gold, and Bitcoin update. On Thursday, March 2nd, silver and gold were hammered again. The assault on silver was particularly merciless. As one SGT Report reader noted in an email, the boys were hard at work today at the silver office, starting at 11:25 for 40 minutes straight. At 11:25, it started with 1,071 contracts on the Comex, then 5,648 contracts at 11:30, 2,798 at 11:35, 1175 at 11:40. You get the idea, for a total of 30,192 contracts in 40 minutes. Incidentally, at the same time the criminal banking establishment was taking the precious metals out to the woodshed for a headshot, Bitcoin was hitting a new all-time high and for the first time passing an ounce of gold in price. So, what is the $1,275 price of Bitcoin telling us? Since Bitcoin is not manipulatable with tens of thousands of contracts on the Comex, the price of Bitcoin is telling us that the future value of a dollar will be worthless. Now, back to the Comex. My friend Bix Weir from Road to Ruta did an excellent video for his channel Road to Ruta on YouTube, and he's given me permission to play some of it for you here. The numbers on the Comex, proving the blatant manipulation of silver, are stunning.
Here's a press release from the CME right after the end of the year, bragging about the huge jump in their daily volume. 15.6 million contracts in 2016, up 12% from 2015. Great news for the Comex, the CME. They make money off every trade, so yahoo for them. Good job.
Yeah, great news for the corrupt Comex where paper, silver, and gold rules the roost. But it's horrible news for those of us who hope for a fair and honest market where physical gold and silver would be allowed to attain an honest market price. Again, what is the unmanipulatable $1,275 price of Bitcoin telling us? Back to Bix.
But look what else they're reporting. Down at the bottom, they talk about metals volume averaged a record 488,000 contracts per day in the fourth quarter 2016, up 49% from the fourth quarter in 2015. Highlights include grew gold futures and options average daily volume 51% to 279,000 contracts. Increased silver futures and options average daily volume 45% to 80,000 contracts every single day.
Let that sink in, friends. The average daily amount of silver traded on the Comex in 2016 was 80,000 contracts per day. Each contract manipulating 5,000 ounces of silver. That's 400 million ounces of paper silver traded each day on the Comex, which means that every 2 days, these criminal bankers trade the total amount of silver mined globally in a year.
80,000 contracts. What does that mean? Futures and options are electronic silver. They are not real silver, they're not physical silver, but that's where the price is determined, on the Comex. So going forward, what do we know? In 2016, the average daily volume of Comex silver, futures and options contracts rose 41% from 57,000 contracts per day to 80,000 contracts every single day. In 2016, this is very interesting, silver mine production fell 3% from 899 million to 866 million ounces. So you have a falling mine production, falling amount of silver coming into the market, but for some reason the electronic silver contracts had to rise 41%. Huge rise throughout the year of 2016. So let's do the math. 80,000 contracts every day. One contract is worth 5,000 ounces of electronic silver, which is equal to 400 million silver ounces per day in futures and options were traded. Now, these are just a handful of banks trading these back and forth, mind you. These aren't your average Joe Schmo walking down to his coin store to buy a few rounds. These are just the banks rigging the price, trading it back and forth and back and forth. So of those 400 million ounces every day, you times that by 252 trading days in the year, and that gives you a nice round total of 100,800,000,000 ounces of electronic silver that were traded on the Comex last year. In a world where mine production fell 3% to 866 million ounces, for some reason they thought it was necessary to hedge with over 100 billion ounces. Criminal.
So if Bitcoin cannot be traded fraudulently on the Comex, what is the price of Bitcoin telling us? I recently interviewed webbot creator Clif High, who shared this stunner.
And so that's sort of a temporal marker, this 20,000 Dow, $600 silver, and all of that leads us up into the big moves for Bitcoin early through next year. And we're looking there. The last number I had that was effective, I think, I actually calculated it out because the Bitcoin is coming in yuan. I have to go into a yuan to dollar conversion. So at the time I looked, the forecast would have been something around $13,000 per Bitcoin sometime February, March-ish of next year.
Now guys, Clif has just released his new ALTA report, which you can purchase now for just $15 from his site halfpasthuman.com. It's 37 pages of nonstop webbot information. So head over to Clif's site and buy the report for $15 to support Clif. And I asked Clif if I could read just a bit from the new report as it pertains to silver, gold, and Bitcoin, and he kindly obliged. On page 27 of the ALTA report, Clif writes, as model space is moved forward in 2017 and during the chaos period of March through May, the data accrues for Bitcoin to become more costly than gold. Well, guys, that's already happened. As the transition takes place, the data sets have it being a temporal marker for many other sets, including silver and precious technologies from Antarctica. These sets have a strange occurrence developing as nations and central banks begin to buy Bitcoin. These sets are providing the propellant for the rush through $1,448 in US dollars on its way to $2,300. These new data sets have the chaos period of these next few months as being pivotal for both Bitcoin and silver. These sets are arguing for the secret hyperinflation to be creeping out. As a temporal marker, these sets are going to the idea that silver will be the shining light as the move into hyperinflation shows in the public consciousness. These sets have silver rising faster in US dollars than either gold or Bitcoin. This is merely speaking to the rate of increase and not its price during that rise. Guys, that makes perfect sense because for Bitcoin to go from $1,275 to $1,500 is what, maybe a 20% increase? Whereas silver could double in price from 18 to 36 and it's gone up 100%, therefore more in percentage terms than Bitcoin. The point here is that Bitcoin is beginning to hyperinflate in US dollars in the same way that silver and gold ought to be hyperinflating in US dollars if they were not so easily manipulatable on the Comex by the criminal bankers. Again, in Clif High's own words from my recent interview.
The forecast would have been something around $13,000 per Bitcoin sometime February, March-ish of next year.
Friends, the bottom line is now very clear. Gold and silver are artificially low in price, but it will not be that way forever. As the US dollar hyperinflates, the bankers will not be able to stem the tide for the demand of physical gold and silver, which will eventually lead to what Clif High is predicting in 2017, which is a $140 price for silver in some way, shape, or form. In the meantime, keep your eye on Bitcoin because it is the canary in the coal mine that tells us that the future value of the US dollar is worthless. Thanks for tuning in, and if you'd like to get a 10-ounce bar of silver at spot, visit our friends at SD Bullion and type in SGT Report into the coupon code, and you'll be able to buy a 10-ounce bar of silver with no markup. Thanks for listening, and for real news 24/7, visit us at sgtreport.com and follow me on Twitter at SGT Report.
There was this white paper that came out and circulated in PBOC, and it had the most staggering plan you could ever imagine, okay? And it basically said, if we, China Pop, were to take over Bitcoin and evenly distribute it, we wouldn't have to worry about all of the whipsaw actions of currencies. There must have been 200 positive benefits from this plan that were listed in that white paper.